Welcome, everybody. We are on the 3 steps to cure your Agile pain, evaluate, diagnose, and get the right treatment plan. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join this Agile webinar and get to know our expert panelists and join in on our conversation. So let's start off with a little bit of logistics here. So we are recording and we will make this recording available to you afterwards. And you are welcome to share around or rewatch any parts that were interesting to you. Along the way, we're expecting that you will be inspired to ask a question, and we thoroughly encourage you to do that. All you need to do is click on the QA button there on the Zoom and type in your question. And we've saved time at the end of the webinar to answer those questions. So please, along the way, as you are inspired, fill that in and we'll take a look at those at the end. Let's now get into a little bit on introductions. First, I want to talk a little bit about ISO's technology. We work with organizations who are either just embarking on their Agile journey or maybe are already there and would like to have a trusted partner work alongside with them to accelerate that journey and get them to the next level. We are also an enterprise Atlassian solution partner, and we have our Agile at scale specialization, and this helps enable us to make sure that we can work with clients who are adopting best of class tools as part of their Agile scaling initiatives. So there's a little bit about ISO's technology. My name is Tracy Walton. I'm the director of Agile services here at ISO's technology. My background was in product management. I worked with software development teams across many different kinds of industries, really small organizations, startups, up to large enterprises. And I've personally been touched by the difference in success and amazingness that is Agile, and I'm very passionate about bringing that to others, organizations and individuals. So I'll be your moderator today. And what I'm going to do next is introduce my panel. I'm very excited for you to get to know them. I'm going to read a little bio and then they can pop on their camera and we can say hello. So I'll start with Sam Sabota. He is an enterprise solution architect at Atlassian. He's based out of LA. And he has a couple decades of experience working in software and technology space for startups to Fortune 500 enterprises. He was first enlightened by the world of Agile while working as a program manager for a major telecom and entertainment corporation. And it was there that he was involved in multiple aspects of a very large-scale transformation with SAFe, first as a release train engineer, and then getting into lean portfolio management and Agile coach, and just an overall transformation agent. So thank you so much, Sam, for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll go on. Kristen Sumari is the director of Agile in Education with Blueprint Education. Blueprint Education is a nonprofit organization that operates 2 high schools in Arizona that has truly embraced the Agile philosophy, not only how they operate fundamentally, but also how they interact and direct their students. So, which I think is phenomenal. With a group of Agile educator pioneers, Kristen co-developed the Agile in Education Compass, and was also invited by Scrum Alliance to co-create the Cal K-12 certification and training guide. So that's the Agile leadership in K through 12 education. Kristen's career is a blended joy for Agile and passion for education to amplify student success inside and out of the classroom. Thank you so much, Kristen, for being here.
Yeah, good morning. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Tracy.
Great. Thank you. And Josh King is the Global Agile Transformation Lead at North Highland. Josh helps organizations achieve the best possible outcomes, whether that's through Agile methods or business process management, or really, some other way. He's spent his career as a consultant across many industries and technology and the business of IT, and he's certainly seen firsthand how mindset can impact the successful implementation of any system. So happy that you are here to join us with all your wisdom and experience as well. Wait, is it good morning for you? Because
it is afternoon.
It's afternoon. You're joining us from the Midwest, so welcome, welcome. All right, so without further ado, let's move into the content for today. We're going to start, like I said, with evaluate, diagnose, and get the right treatment plan. So when we're talking about evaluate, what I want to say about this is evaluate, we're going to look at something and then make a judgment about it. And when it comes to Agile pain, I think in general, we judge that pain a little too harshly. We might forget that Agile really is meant to shine a light on those problems that may have otherwise been hidden if we are adopting other practices than Agile. So Agile really is meant to shine a light on those problems, and the pain really is about how, are we addressing them? So I want to hear from our panel, what are some ways that you and your clients have experienced that pain from shining a light on a problem that, wasn't there before, adopting Agile? I'll start out with Kristen.
Yeah, so the beginning of our shining the light moment was super painful. At the beginning of this, we were a failing district, a failing school, and our amazing Agile coach came in and had the brilliant idea of, hey, put your Scrum board in the middle of your school. That's where I want your backlog. That's where I want you to meet. We have to start being vulnerable and transparent with our stakeholders, right? So as a principal, I'm thinking, you want me to air our dirty laundry to the very people that are our end users? Like, how is this helpful? Wait, what is this Agile thing again? And, at the end of it, airing out and just being really transparent about the things that weren't working really helped build buy-in and kind of this organic call to action even for our stakeholders and for our students. It got to a point where the students were saying, I can help with that, miss. Number four in that backlog, we can take that on. And so, it was painful, but the gains were so rewarding, after, and the freedom we got from being.
It sounds like a full 180 from let's not only I happen to know a few problems, but really we're going to tell everybody about it. Talk about shining a light.
Absolutely.
And the unexpected benefit of getting people swarming on addressing them. I love that. I love that story. Sam, let me call on you. Same question. What have you seen? What's been your experience?
So at Atlassian, I work with customers to implement our Jira Line product, which is our Agile at Scale software. And a lot of our customers are going through an Agile scale transformation. And so, as Tracy, you mentioned, Agile highlights some of the problems. And so Jira Line does a really great job of highlighting bottlenecks and problems with their transformation and how they operate and their practices. And so some areas like dependencies are very common where customers start seeing bottlenecks. And the thing is that these bottlenecks, really the root cause of the problem is not very clear. And it really takes some investigation and research to really understand the problems. And sometimes it's interesting to see a lot of our customers, they start moving in the direction of wanting to blame a framework like SAFe or, their Agile at Scale framework as a problem. And their leaders see Agile is not solving the problems that they that they expected, getting them, better, cheaper, faster. But what's really interesting is that the ones that do dive deeper start realizing that there are things like, there are technical limitations, such as maybe that their architecture of their code is monolithic. So then their limitation of really having agility is hamstrung by their technical architecture. Right. So what you really want to do is, to come up with a treatment plan and figure out how you can actually address those problems and not just stop at highlighting the problems and identifying that you have problems.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful to start with identifying, but we don't want to stop there, right? And I also want to touch on one of the things you said about blaming frameworks. I think that kind of goes back to the point I was making about judging the pain that we're feeling too harshly, like so much so that we're looking outside of ourselves for, what could be the problem, instead of saying, okay, this is an indication that we need to address this. That's really what the pain is saying. And I like that, Kristen, you talk about transparency, put it up for the whole school to see. And Sam, you're saying, like tools like Jira Line can help highlight those things, but let's take it to the next step. So actually with that, let's move on to step 2. So we talked about evaluate. We're going to go on to diagnose, where evaluate is about like acknowledging that we have a problem, that our pain is likely from problems that we haven't yet addressed. And then diagnose really is going in another level and looking closer at the root cause of the problem, so that, for the purpose of getting to the treatment plan. But I want to pause for a minute and talk about diagnosis. And I'm gonna make a statement here that our willingness to be open, to be humble, to challenge the things that we already know, being self-reflective is incredibly an effective way at getting into the root cause and being able to diagnose problems. So I want to hear from the panel. Do you agree with this? And can you elaborate, your thoughts in that matter? Sam, I'll start with Sam.
Yeah, so I agree. I think being open and humble to, self-reflection is really important. I went through a large SAFE transformation, as Tracy mentioned, as an RTE, and then being part of a transformation team. And one of the things that I saw was a lack of self-reflection and humbleness from our leadership. Their attitudes were, I was successful in the past in how I got here. You can't tell me why I'm failing, and it's Agile. That's why we're failing.
That's the problem.
And that's the problem. It's like,
yeah.
I think you have to have some humility and see that Agile, like, as I mentioned, highlights some of your problems, and that, the current way of how you approach things as a leader, your attitude doesn't necessarily sustain in the future. And I think that's something that having that openness and willingness to change is really important.
Yep, absolutely. I want to hear from Josh. You haven't had a chance to chime in here. Do you want to add on to what Sam was saying? Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier last year, I was actually engaged with a client that had, signed up to do an Agile transformation. And after we'd gotten there and we'd been there for a little while, we came back to the CIO and said, hey, we can work with your teams and we can, get them to work in an Agile way, but we're seeing a lot of leadership behaviors that are going to go against what we need to see from an Agile leader, right? And it was actually this leader actually took that and said, you know what, we need to fix that problem before we go on, right? And we're not going to spend a whole lot of money trying to create agility within our teams just for our leaders to smash it down. So they actually paused their Agile transformation so that they could focus on that bigger problem. And, what was really amazing is that this organization really prided themselves on their leadership development program that they had in place. And they thought it was really great. And it was, it was an eye-opening thing for them to hear that their leadership was a problem.
It sounds like it could have been a really tough pill to swallow, and that being open to it was, I'm guessing, what ultimately led to their success, because they started right with their leadership team before moving on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Kristen, let's hear from you as well.
Yeah, so different industry, right? But same thing. There's this habit when you're trying to diagnose problems of, let's look at the current problems, let's kind of see what exists. But when we were on this Agile journey, we said, hey, we're not just going to focus on like the current problems. Like, let's look at the whole process too, right? Let's go back and think about, how did we get here? And that's kind of scary when you're talking about diagnosing things. But the process of trying to remember, how did we get to this point? Like, where we have these things, the good, the bad, and the horrible, right? Like, what didn't we do that led us to this? But also acknowledging kind of like, what are those things that we did do well that got us here, right? Like, what are the things that we can call out that we want to keep doing? So diagnosing for me wasn't just about like figuring out the problems and figuring out how to get rid of them. It was also highlighting those things that, like, yeah, we did that. We did that well. Like, let's keep doing that in this process of reframing kind of our structure and what we want to do.
Or I'm guessing you look back and you say, yeah, we didn't do that so well, but now we've learned this and we can apply it as we go. I like that a lot, because, like, I'm pitching that we want to encourage openness and challenging our thinking. And I think sometimes it requires some encouragement. I think because it takes courage to look at our mistakes and really look at them. So I like that you're adding to this that, hey, let's look and see what we're doing well to keep us encouraged and moving on. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've always got to celebrate those successes and the wins as you move forward. Something else you want to think about when you're looking at doing the diagnosis piece is, have I determined the diagnosis of it's a cough or is this the pneumonia, right? So like, am I going to treat the right thing? For example, with, that organization that I was talking about, like they could have treated the cough, but they chose to treat the thing that was going to kill them eventually.
Yeah, I think another big part of that, Josh, is kind of owning it, right? So that was really hard. We've diagnosed it, we see the issues. Some of that came with the accountability piece too, being humble enough to say, yep, we did that, but we own it. And here's how we're going to fail forward. But accepting that there was something that was a little broken or that needed some fixing, owning it, I think takes a lot of courage. And when it's modeled, I think that kind of spreads that, like, it's okay for us to be accountable as we move forward.
And what's important is that owning it doesn't mean blaming.
Absolutely.
Right? Because it's like, yep, we did that thing. We got here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I need to find somebody to be my scapegoat. It's just like, okay, what's going to move us forward from this point to the next point? Absolutely. Because finding somebody to blame is only focusing in the past and it's not going to move us forward.
Absolutely.
It is, it's one thing to look for the root cause to be able to move on versus looking at the root cause so that we can justify where we are, because that, even though you may be justified, it's not going to move you forward, right? So yeah, I love that point too. Awesome. All right, let's move on. We're making good time here to treatment plans. So, if we've talked about taking a look at our pain, understanding that it's a problem that we want to address, we've, gathered our humility and we've done our due diligence to dig in and really diagnose root cause, celebrating our successes as we go. We certainly want to get to the treatment plan. And this even came up like on slide 1. Let's do something about it, make sure we have a treatment plan. So, you might be working with leaders inside your organization or other change agents inside your organization who have supported you in your assessment and, taking a look at where you are and where you want to go as inputs to, like prioritizing the problems and coming up with a plan to address them. And if you don't have somebody inside your organization that you can go to, of course, there's trusted partners, consultant coaches, a whole community of Agile experts out there that you highly recommend that you pull in. But an underlying aspect to any treatment plan that I want to highlight here and give us a few minutes to discuss is this concept of an aha moment. The ability to kind of cultivate or curate within your organization these mini aha moments all over the place so that your teams are like naturally wanting to adopt whatever action plan or change or step that you have coming their way. So what I want to hear from the panelists here is some more, I want to hear your own personal story of your aha moment. I think it's inspiring for those out there who are in the trenches, so to speak, putting their action plans together and rolling them out. I want to hear about your aha moment. So who wants to go first? I'll just open it up. Not everybody at once, though.
Yeah, I can throw it out there. For my aha moment, when I first found out about Agile, the first time I heard about it, I told my boss he was nuts and it was never going to work.
You said he was nuts?
I told him he was nuts. And then I went on to, was running a project for target marketing, and it was a year-long project, and it was just a slog, right? We were just, doing stuff, and it was constantly change requests, and
Anybody else?
at the end of the project, it was just, everybody was unhappy. I was unhappy, the team was unhappy, the client was unhappy, but we'd spent a year building this thing, and it was just like, here you go.
We did it. We slogged through.
Yeah, we made it happen. We went to production. Yay. And I went into my boss's office after that and I said, dude, I don't care what method I have to use if I never have that experience again. And he was like, okay, so you're ready to try Scrum. And I was like, whatever you want to call it, buddy, we'll do it.
So you're talking about the pain that led you to the Agile pain that we're talking about today.
Yep. And it was like the next project I ran at Target was using Scrum, and it was the same client, same target marketing area, same exact team. And it was a 6-month project, and it was night and day. Everybody throughout the project was happy. We were having great conversations with the business. We were actually building features they wanted. And, it was just, it was one of those moments where I was just like, this is the way things work.
This is it.
And
You're never looking
I'm never
back.
going back.
Yeah.
And I metaphorically burned the ships and dove headfirst into the Agile waters, and I've never wanted to come back. I actually interviewed for a company a few years back, and they said, "Oh, this project is or this team is not using Agile. Is that going to be a problem?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're done here."
Totally hooked. So that's like not even an aha moment. That was like an aha, whole end-to-end experience. I love that, because I think everybody has some skepticism, and I think it's healthy going into, no matter how much we can explain like why this is important, there's always a little skepticism. So, getting past that can be a little thing, or it can be like, all right, I'm all the way bought in. Here we go. That's like you were saying, the only teams I'm going to be working with are Agile teams. Love it. All right. Kristen, let's hear yours.
So like Josh, I kind of had a nuts moment. I knew we were nuts when, as slow as it was to get our teachers on board with, being Agile and actually using Scrum to help organize, we had this crazy idea of letting students do it, right? And man, the students took hold of it a lot faster than the teachers, ironically. But my aha moment was, I happened to be in a classroom, and it was retrospective day. And, there's this kid, and we'll call him Kid B. And the teacher was always on him, you've got to get to school. You've got to come to school. Being absent isn't working. His mom, you've got to go to school. It's got to be important. And so I'm watching this retrospective, and it kind of comes up that, he had missed a few days of the sprint. And the team was kind of upset about it, and the kid is like, yeah, but I pulled my tasks. I did the work. And they're like, dude, you didn't help get to the work, right? Like, you weren't a part of like how we got there. And like, we needed your voice in that, and it was kind of, you see the kid like who had argued with teacher and mom about his need to show up. You see his team now taking kind of responsibility for saying, no, we need you here. And the value that brought to him was so much more than we could have ever, pounded into him. He knew that he was valued more than just because he was showing up to check a box saying he was attending, but because the work he was doing, his voice, his contribution was valued by his team. And so that self-regulation became a huge eye-opener for us, that when you give these kids autonomy to really lead themselves and kind of self-govern, we don't have to be the bosses in the room anymore saying, show up, you need to be there, finish your work. They started doing that not to each other, they started doing that for each other. And the empowerment that came from that, no teacher could ever, we can't match that, right? We need to work ourselves out of a job. And that was my aha moment, that like, man, you talk about teacher burnout, this could kind of curb that, right? This
Wow.
could curb that.
Yeah, absolutely. It curbs so many things. That's really an inspirational story. And talk about, getting worked out of a job. I'm excited for the day. I think I've told you this before, where I get worked out of a job because the people entering the workforce are like, wait, what? This is just how we are, what Agile thing? No, this is just how we operate. And it's not something that really needs to be learned, so to speak. But that's a great example. Thank you. All right, Sam, bring us home.
Yeah, so I have a background in project management, and one of the interesting things as a project manager when I was doing it was there's a term that project managers say, which is herding cats. You feel like you're herding cats, and it's very frustrating. You're working with teams, and you're like, why can't they just do it? They come to you with their problem, and they want you to fix it. When I started doing Agile, learning Agile, I always heard about self-organizing, self-managing teams, and I didn't really quite get it until it clicked to me when I was working with some executives and managers, and they were frustrated. They're like, why can't my teams figure this out on their own? I just want them to think for themselves. And the funny thing is that, a lot of these command and control top-down leaders, what they really want is a team with an Agile mindset, in that they can figure out and solve their own problems. And it's quite ironic because they still want that control, but they really want their teams to think for themselves. And what's interesting, I think, is a good treatment plan is to for leaders and managers is, how do you develop your teams to have that mindset to be able to be self-organizing, self-managing? And that's what really self-organizing, self-managing is empowering people, as Kristen said, to make decisions and solve and figure out problems on their own, and only come to you when they really are stuck, right? So that you can focus as a leader on what the more strategic activities or work, rather than getting bogged down in the day-to-day. So it was a very, really clear aha moment for me to really realize that Agile is about really getting people to think for themselves and feeling empowered. In the end, people are more happy that way. They feel more motivated.
I remember when you summed this up before, and you said, like, as a project manager, if everybody could just take care of their own problems, like, everything would be so much better. Like, as part of your aha moment. So I love that you're speaking to that, because it really does require like the setup of to be acknowledged as self-organizing, and that we can trust them to solve their problem. Let's push the problems to them instead of the commands, right?
Yeah, and when you develop that trust with your teams, it changes the relationship dynamic with you, right? They appreciate it, and they see that there's that trust with them, that you're not going to question them, you're not going to question their abilities, and I think that's really powerful. As Kristen said, it's an empowering feeling that teams get and people get.
That's why we're here. We love it. All right, I'm going to move us on. I have an extra. So we went through evaluate, diagnose, and treatment plan, but I do want to call out naysayers, because I think no matter where you are in your organization, on your team, on your Agile journey, you're going to come across naysayers who are like, maybe later they become your best champions, but along the way, they could certainly disrupt, I'll say, your team's inspiration to take on the action steps that we've laid out in our treatment plan. So for each of you, I want you to tell me a little bit about your experience with those who you've come across who just completely oppose Agile. And I know, Josh, you said you were one of them to begin with, but do you have any other examples?
Yeah, and this was a few years ago. I was working for a reinsurance company, and when I joined, it was funny, they hired me to be the scrum master for the team, or for this program. And then the vice president told me that Agile methods were a waste of time, and they didn't work, and they were inefficient and ineffective.
Scrum master, but really, okay, so just a name only kind of, okay.
Yeah. And when I got there, I started, using Agile ways of working with these teams, and within 6 months, he came to me and he was like, wow, I've never seen this team deliver like this. Quality's up. We're getting product out the door. The business is happy with what we're doing. This is amazing. And I was like, yeah, I've been using Scrum to run this team for the last 6 months. This is Agile. And it was kind of like, I didn't try to talk him into it. I just showed, you know, this phrase, the proof is in the pudding, like I
There
give
it
them a
is.
bowl of pudding, right?
Yeah. The whole bowl of pudding. That was like a mic drop moment. Like, was there like creepy silence when you landed that like little piece of information? Like, oh, by the way, we're doing the thing that you happen to think is a complete waste of time.
I wish it had been that dramatic.
It makes for a good story, at least in my imagination. But it's a perfect example of, you know, reaching to the naysayers with some pudding. Put the proof in the pudding. Cool. All right, let's go to Sam. Let's hear your experience there with naysayers.
So, you know, as I mentioned, you know, I was part of a large safe transformation. And one of the things as we were going through it, there were people that actually became anti-safe, and they were trying all these different frameworks and models, looking at it like, let's try the Spotify model and
Wait,
do that.
while you were doing the safe transformation?
Yeah, while we're doing this transformation. And so working with a lot of customers going through agile scale transformations, a lot of them are doing safe, or I even encounter customers that say, we don't call it safe, but we're doing aspects of it. And it's interesting to see how frameworks get blamed for problems that are really not the framework itself. And so one of the things, I'm actually a yoga teacher, and you know, I've been studying for like over like 10 years, about 15 years. And the thing about, if you've ever done yoga, there's yoga postures, and they're difficult. And the whole thing is your mind is very reactive into the difficulty of it, and you're struggling, right? And yoga is about finding that freedom within the form. How do you find inner peace while in this difficult posture? Well, I see agile frameworks the same way, is that you're given a framework, but now how do you know, develop agility through the lean agile mindset, like your leaders, you know, your technical agility, and then find, you know, becoming agile, right? It's finding that freedom within the form. And it's not really the framework. You could throw whatever framework on top of it, but if you don't have that freedom, which is the agility, you're always going to struggle. You know, I'll give you an example. Like, I was an RT of an art that had 27 teams, and I was being told that's not recommended to do. You know, they're saying, but
That's not in the framework.
it's not the framework. It's not about safe. It's not about these rules, these guidelines of following, like, I'm going to follow this, therefore I'm going to be agile. Doing Scrum, you know, safe doesn't mean you're agile. It's a whole package of your mindset, your technical agility, everything in combination.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy about finding freedom in the form, because I think a lot of naysayers will just point like, oh, that framework doesn't work, but there's more to it that we can get into. So that's a great analogy for that. Thank you. All right, Kristen, let's hear you.
So I think, talking about naysayers, you think about the largest group of people sitting in a room that could possibly be naysayers, it would be teachers. You know, that you're trying to convince them to take on one more thing, right? And then this one more thing is something they've never heard of. Like, you know, I know we're failing. I know students aren't showing up. I know financially we're in trouble, but agile, you know, the looks that we were given when we're trying to, you know, convince these people that there's a better way to work. There's a better way to educate. And so one of our biggest mistakes, though, you know, going in with our naysayers was we went in preaching agile, right? This is the vocabulary. This is the common language. Everyone needs to know it. It took us a year or so to realize what a mistake that was. So when we wanted to do this transformation for our students, we decided we're not going in with the vocab and the heavy terminology and the steps have to look like this, and this is a framework. We let them experience what it was to work in this way. We created a culture that fostered the agile values, and we let them practice Scrum without calling it anything. And then it became, just like what Tracy said earlier, it became this organic way that they just think that work should happen, or the way they think education should go, that they become the evangelists for it, right? They go into a new classroom and it's like, oh, no, where's our Scrum board? Mister, we didn't have a reflection this week. They become owners of it, not us. So yeah, a lot of naysayers, especially in an industry that's not really catered to being agile.
It's a good example of, learning and adapting and, taking a path that, or taking responsibility for not creating naysayers to begin with. Right. And approaching it in a more organic manner that allows for those aha moments to happen naturally. And then they just ask for it. Give me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing on naysayers. That was a little extra bonus that I wanted to make sure we had some time to get into. All right. So last little bit before we wrap up and get into some Q&A, I do want to have a little lightning round because like all of us have mentioned, especially in the naysayer section, like agile ways of working is really so much more than following some like set of steps or processes. Like the agile mindset is rooted in values and principles, and it's from those values and principles that we can guide our actions. So if you're ever stuck or not sure what step to take next or are looking for some inspiration, I highly recommend that you turn to the Agile principles. So for this little lightning round, as it implies, we're going to quickly go to each person. And I just want you to throw out for us, like, what is the one Agile principle or value that stands out most for you or that you live in your daily life? So let's go, Josh.
Simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done is essential. Like it, and it's, I think that's important not only at work, but also in my personal life. Like, I don't have a lot of time for a bunch of mess, right? And like, let's boil this thing down. Let's make it as simple as possible, make sure it works, and then let's move on.
Yep. Know what you're saying yes to when you say no to something, right? Keep it simple. I'm going to say yes to this and no to the extra.
Yep.
Thank you. Kristen, what you got?
I would say transparency, not just to be able to tap into like the kind of optimal insight of my team's health, but really because it's freedom for me to be just as transparent and really practice vulnerability, right? Be able to model that, be able to give that gift, right? Of like, we see it, we know it, and it's okay, but also to be able to practice that as an agile leader and to be able to model that, knowing it is okay for everyone. Even the leaders, right? It's okay for a leader to be transparent about their mistakes and their growth.
It is an incredible thing to model for us. Like, imagine a world if we were all, able to look at our mistakes in a way that like we can learn from them, or we're happy to talk about them. That's an incredible vulnerability, and I'm so glad to hear that you're modeling that. Sam, what you got?
So the one Agile principle that really kind of resonates with me is the build projects around motivated individuals and give them an environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Because Agile's about creating a trusting environment. And so for me, like, I've seen that, like, when you trust people, they feel motivated, they have fun. I think Agile's fun. Kristen sounds like, in their environment at her school, they're having fun with Agile. And it is, I see it, it's making about fun. And so that's one area, like, if you get people motivated, like at Atlassian, one of our company values is be the change you seek. Like, our company empowers us and trusts us to go and find things to make changes. We have a hackathon called Ship It, where we have 48 hours to do anything we want, any project that become products or anything or improvements, within our company. So those things kind of motivate people to kind of do more and go above and beyond. And so I think really, that principle, if we can like live it, will really kind of get us very far.
It's fun now, Sam.
What was that, Kristen?
I said it's fun now. It wasn't always fun, but it is fun. Consistency is key, right?
Yep. I think that part of, like I asked the question, imagine a world where everybody would be, willing to be open and learning with their mistakes, and the same kind of thing. Like, imagine a world where everybody's, incredibly motivated and trusted to contribute all of their skills and talents. Like, imagine what that would be. So I love that we're creating this in our in our daily lives. And then I'll throw one out there. I'm into the regularly reflect and adjust your way of work to boost effectiveness. I do like to reflect and look back and see like, oh, I think I've said before, I want to hear more no's. I want to hear more why not, so I can dig in and find out why not and then adjust. So that's definitely one I take with me day to day. All right, let's cruise along. That is it for like the general content. I do want to like summarize again. We went through evaluate, diagnose, and get the right treatment plan. It, our content might have sounded a little different than you would have expected, but I think each of the points that we're making in each of these sections are just important for us to keep in mind as we're going forward on the Agile journey. So, like don't judge your pain so harshly. See it as an indicator that there's a problem that maybe we're lucky to know about it. It's not hidden anymore, and that we can come together and address it. The diagnose, self-reflection, humility, like I said, challenging what you already know is incredibly effective in sustaining success. Like we talked about, what got you to where you are today won't necessarily get you to where you want to go. So can we practice some unlearning, if you will, so that we can get to the root cause? And then, of course, we all want to get to the treatment plan. We're here today. We want to be here tomorrow. And what are the steps that are going to help us get there? So partner with experts inside your organization or those outside of your organization and cultivate that experience of an aha moment. Celebrate your small successes and have your teams naturally, organically pull in, I want more of this Agile business because they've got a taste of the success. So there's our summary. Let's go on to a couple little things and then we'll get into Q&A. If you would like to get some more information, stay connected with ISOS, please go ahead and download the Leading Through Change, the C-suite's role in enterprise Agile transformation. It's our white paper at isostech.com/enterprise-agile. Or keep the conversation going with us. Contact us directly through our website or the phone number there on the screen. For those of you listening who may be joining us at Atlassian's Team 22, look out for us there. We would love to connect if you'll be there as well. And then let's move on to some Q&A. So like I mentioned early on, we have the Q&A button there. You can shoot us some questions and we're happy to answer those. I think while we're waiting for any of those to come in, I want to turn back to the panel. I'm curious if you have any questions that you want to ask each other.
Yeah, I am super interested in the application of Agile in education.
Right.
And like thinking about how that would have to be tailored or what that would, like what were the, I guess, trying to phrase my thoughts, but it's like, what's the unique thing you learned about using Agile in an educational environment?
Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of them, right? We don't have that much time. But one of the things that stuck out to me the most is like our end user they're students. They are the next workforce. They're the people that we're hoping will work better. And so all of the outcomes or products or, the things that they get done can't just be products. It can't just be deliverables that are tangible. Sometimes they need to be things like some of these skills that we're saying, as Agile leaders, we have to, help our people become transparent and open and focused and have courage. Well, we measure those things. In Agile in education, those things are as valuable as the products that they deliver. So it's not just about them pushing out a project or getting through an assignment. It's about, hey, at the end of this, did we see the student grow in their courage? Did they take a step towards more accountability? Did they collaborate better? So we're measuring not only the products and the tangibles that they deliver, we're measuring the growth of the skills that they're showing that produce a more Agile environment.
That's a mic drop moment for me right there. Because it's just such an incredible example of focusing on what's most important. And like Sam was saying, we're not just taking the framework and applying it, but we're we're understanding like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish and where can we pull from to make this fit for us? And it total mic drop moment.
Yeah,
that was a great question.
It reminds me a lot of the work of Sir Ken Robinson and great use how education as it's currently structured stifles creativity, and like what you're talking about is a way to undo that, so to speak.
Yeah. All right, I have a question that came in from Alyssa, and I'm going to throw this out to the whole panel. Please feel free to jump in with your advice. And she asks, what is advice you have for an Agile advocate trying to help an organization unlearn some bad legacy habits?
That is a good one.
Yeah.
I'll take a first stab at that. And I would say, give them new habits to attach themselves to. Sometimes calling it out and saying, well, I want you to not do this, right? We've learned this with our students, by the way, the rebellion, you tell them not to do something. That's the only thing they want to do. Same way with Agile. Instead of coming in saying, hey, don't do this, don't do that, rethink this. We just said, hey, here's something we want you to think about. Here's a few things that we want you to take with you. And eventually feeding them those new habits and those new healthy ways of thinking things and ways to kind of shift their mind. Those become the new habits. But stopping it in its tracks and calling it out, we found kind of goes the other direction. But, as an Agile leader, really finding ways to introduce these things consistently, bringing in new healthy habits and ways of working and making sure they're available.
I got to highlight that consistency, because I think I've seen before that, we'll do one training or we'll talk about it one time and assume that everybody has it, like, when was the last time you did the first something for the first time, and like, what did that feel like? And really, how many times do I need to feel it and hear it before it sticks? So I love that you call that out. I do have another question come in, but if you have, I want to hear, Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just
I was going to add, Tracy, one of the things about like, how does an Agile advocate like get an organization to unlearn? And I think for a lot of leaders, they want to see proof, right? They're very hesitant. Agile's a new way of working. They don't get it. And for a lot of them, they have to see that it's successful. Now, in my personal experience, and I didn't really realize this, that I became a change agent, is that, I mentioned I was running a 27 team art, which is huge. And everybody thought I was going to fail. And I didn't know, but I was like, I got to make this work. I got to figure out how to make this work. And I was working with the VP of engineering at the time, and he wasn't an Agilist. He didn't know Agile. And he saw that it was working and that it worked with all his teams, and his teams were happy. And he said, Sam is doing something right. And I think you got to find a leader, an executive leader that you can influence and let them see the light, that can help be your advocate to help drive change. Because he and I ended up working together to kind of help push and make sure that we continued on that, Agile journey, right? Whereas other executives were like, this thing doesn't work. And so you kind of have to build that kind of relationship and show someone, hey, this can really work and this is going to bring benefits.
This is interesting, because you're saying, like the question is about how to help the organization unlearn. And sometimes what you're saying, it's really about finding those who are already willing to unlearn and use them to build some success, to go back and like show proof of success, if you will, to help others then question and unlearn. So I like that approach too. So before I go to the next question, Josh, I want to give you a chance to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on actually to both of what they both said. One is you can't just throw the Agile book at them and like vomit Agile stuff on them and expect that they're going to want to change. That's usually a good way, as Kristen articulated, that they're going to say, nah, I'm not doing it. So it's really critical that you meet people where they are. And they may have some bad legacy habits. So let's figure out ways that we can improve using empirical data. So this is like, just start with a retrospective. How did it go? What are we going to do next? How are we going to make it better? And just go that way. Forget about all the other stuff. Just start with incremental change.
Simplify.
Yeah, simplify.
Yeah.
To add on what Josh just says, like the empirical data, like, I work with customers on Jira Line, it shows a lot of their data, right? And the data doesn't look pretty sometimes. But as an Agile advocate, one of the things I see is leadership doesn't understand Agile metrics. When they transition to Agile, they go, show me metrics, show me metrics. But in the old way of working, they're used to tell me like the health, red, yellow, green, right? There's no data behind it. There's no metrics. It's subjective. So, educating your leaders in empirical data. What does it mean? What do you do with the data? How do you change? How do you improve? Like they need that hand-holding in order to be able to understand, because they relate to data. Show me results, show me how we are doing. And if you can, guide them in this journey and help them learn and see the improvements through the data, that's really going to help you move the needle, I would say.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. All right. One more question I'm going to throw out. And let's see. So this is from Melissa, and she's asking for a recommendation for a solution to an environment where the business and teams commit to too much rather than picking one thing and doing it well and then moving on to the next. I'll open that up.
So I actually had this at a recent client, and I think the big problem in this particular instance was, we're making the shift from tennis, where we're all like, we have to be Superman, to now we're playing soccer and it's a team sport and we all have to work together to be successful. So eventually I got down to, you get one story for this sprint.
One story per sprint?
One
How'd
story.
that go?
The team was like, well, I don't have anything to do. And I was like, well, you got one story, go figure it out, right? You got to figure out how to contribute to that story, because that's all you got to do this sprint. And I mean, they finished it in like 3 or 4 days. So we had to pull more stuff in, but,
right.
Forcing them to think about, let's do something, let's get it done, and then let's move on, was critical, because that way they started thinking about, it's not that I have 2 weeks to get this done. It's I need to get this done, this whole scope of work in the 2 weeks, and let's get this thing to done now and then move on.
That is such a seemingly minor difference, but such an incredible twist in your mindset of what it means to be on a team, right? Like, we're here to get what we're committed to done, not I have 2 weeks for this.
Yeah.
That's
Which
great.
means on day 9.5, I start working on it.
Nice. All right. Well, one more question I'm going to throw out. This came in from Thad. Josh gave an example of leadership that was willing to admit that they were the first problem to be fixed. This is going back a few towards the beginning, which is amazing. So how do you talk to less agreeable leadership teams to get them on board? So I'm imagining, like, what if that, they had responded differently and said, oh, yeah, well, why don't you just go do the transformation first? And that's nice to know, but thank you, no thank you.
Unfortunately, that is all too often the answer. And realistically, the only thing is getting that empirical data and demonstrating the impact that they're having, and being able to come back and show that. And one of the things that we measure when we look at Agile transformations within an organization is team morale. And if you can show that, hey, like, we were going along, team morale was going great, and then all of a sudden it tanked at this moment, like, what happened right there? And have that conversation with the leader, and they're like, oh, that was when I had my all hands. And you're like, oh, so interacting with you actually dropped the morale of the team. Interesting. Maybe we should have a conversation about that.
So this is using the empirical data for more than just showing success, but like showing where it might be impeded along the way.
Right. And that to me is where the enterprise coaching comes in, and it's extremely important, is to have somebody that can actually help that leader be introspective, because they're in that position because they've been successful. They're not there because they're dumb.
Yeah.
They're not, they're there because they're good at what they do. And now we have to help them understand that what got you here is not going to get you there, and that you need to learn something new in order to make that happen.
Love it. Good. Well, we are about out of time. I appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts, their questions, and spending, part of their day with us. It means the world to us. So please, reach out to us if you have any other questions or want to stay connected. Really, really appreciate Kristen, Josh, Sam. Thank you again so much. And we'll see everybody later.